Oh yes, Major started recording. Yes, you did it. Okay, so about this meeting, the idea there is to discuss about 3 points. The discussion, we will have a time blocker at 4:15. 4:50, sorry, 4:50 in more than 45 minutes from now. And so the idea there is we discussed, we do not necessarily need to agree on every point, but we continue on discussing offline by mail or by point-to-point discussion. And at the end, we come to a common document. At the beginning, as a seed to start the discussion, I have prepared a document. So there are 3 points that I would like to address today. Question about the data set. So make sure that when we speak about data set, we do all speak of the same creature, that we have a common definition. Question about working data. I don't know if it is relevant to have a specific definition of working data if it's not redundant with data set. We have to see that. I'd like to have those 2 points discussed by 4:20, and then we have the big part, which is a discussion about the namespace. Since the last discussion we had during the big meeting a few weeks ago, I brought some new ideas for the namespace management, and I would like to see how it would fit everyone concerned. Okay, so regarding the data sets, basically, the raw idea there is objects are addressed in a flat way. And there is no organization in between objects. And we have different ways to provide organizations, to provide a consistent and hierarchical sometimes view on the data inside the objects. And this is done by those creatures that we will be speaking about today. The first is the data set. The data set is a very high-level view of the object. It's basically, I define it as a collection of objects, so each of them has an object ID, and but their content share affinities from a given point of view. It may be a system point of view, or it may be a user or an application point of view. This affinity is completely known, and it's completely it's clear to state and to understand. And it's this affinity is the purpose of the existence of the reason why the data set exists. For example, we may have all the configuration of the monitoring in the IOC residing in different objects. We may make the assumptions that those configurations are very big creature, I don't know, whatever. And we have a data set which is the configuration data for the IOC monitoring. Or we have the weather data on the Paris area on June the 23rd. That's the time when I was writing this document. Actually, I think that data sets have at least a few mandatory metadata. It doesn't mean that no other data are prohibited. You can have all the metadata you want. But at least I think we should have a creation time, last modification time, a last read, a last metadata change, if possible to implement, an owner, a size, if it has a reason to exist, the permission, such as the ACL, or write permission, read permission, this kind of stuff, something very similar to what exists in the POSIX, but may be extended by some custom ACLs. An idea, of course, and tag or user-defined metadata. I don't know if you're using the Evernote software, which is a tool for writing notes on a smartphone. It's synchronized with the cloud. And Evernote is a very well made system based on tags, which make it easy to query the notes you have stored in the Evernote. And it's actually a tag to identify. So the tag will identify some important aspect on the metadata. For example, for the configuration of the IOC monitoring, we may have a tag system data, we may have a tag monitoring data, and we may have a tag configuration, this kind of stuff. And if I look for every data sets related to configurations, then I will get that dataset ID that will come. So basically, from an implementation point of view, a dataset is nothing but a set of metadata stored in some KVS somewhere. It's basically a set of key value pairs that defines the organization we have here. Are you okay with this dataset creature? What does it? What are your reactions?
Do that dataset metadata apply only to the dataset, or it applies to each object inside?
On the dataset.
So it is global. Okay.
Yeah, it's not global. It's attached to the metadata. It's the dataset's owns metadata. Objects have their metadata too, but dataset is it's a metadata creature only, but it has the data. It has an ID, and it has some metadata attached to it. Mm-hmm. Kind of metadata, so to say. That doesn't make sense.
So essentially, definition of dataset is something which has common metadata, right? That would be one dataset X, and any other dataset with another set of metadata would be dataset Y. Yes
and no, actually. From my point of view, objects with common metadata are more correlated with the namespace stuff. I will speak later. But you are right to state that the two creatures have very common features. They look similar from some point of view.
Okay.
Yes, my understanding is that what defines the dataset is more the affinities that exist between the data than the metadata itself.
From my, I do think the same, actually.
Okay.
And how do you see users being exposed to those dataset concepts? I think users will have to create the datasets, and so users will own those datasets. We have an owner in the. So it's a feature, a concept that is exposed to users.
Yes, basically objects and basically datasets is a collection of objects with a common goal with common affinities, and then depending on the interface you have for the user accessing the data on the datasets, you use a namespace. And so the user will see his data via a namespace, via a given interface.
Yeah, but to associate with datasets, the user will also be exposed to datasets.
Mm.
Okay, just to make sure.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Going a bit further to the working data text that is below, where you, for instance, talk about picture of cats and picture of dogs. For instance, we could imagine that a data scientist that wants to work on IOC comes with 1,000 cats images and 1,000 dogs images. So the first step for him would be to create two data sets, one with 1,000 images with cats and 1,000 images with dogs in another data set.
Yeah.
And so you will have to name those data sets.
Probably.
Yeah, so we can probably think that a kind of CRUD environment will be needed for users to manipulate data sets.
Not only CRUD, any CRUD is a way, basically S3 is a way to do that. But it's not the only way. For example, if I can expose an empty POSIX namespace and mount it via NFS and let the user copy if their data actually reside on the local disk, they can copy it using a regular CP or async or whatever they want to copy inside the POSIX and the POSIX namespace.
Yeah,
yes, at the same time.
I think I was not. I think what you say is right, but it's a kind of CRUD interaction. So there is a way for users to create, to read, to update, and to delete their data sets.
Yeah, and they should be able to kind of import datasets, for example.
And then import, yes, probably task 4.4 is also importing datasets. You're right, yes, I think. Okay.
Michael, do you take some notes or?
No.
Okay, so
I was thinking that the conclusion of the summary would then be sort of kind of included in the text, and that we have the recording to be part of. No, I have not taken any notes. Sorry, Philip, on this.
It doesn't matter. That's probably a name to be added to the metadata.
To the data sets.
Yeah.
Yeah, data sets will be manipulated, so the users will be. We will need users to be able to list their data sets, to create new, to update, and to delete.
I see a problem here in aggregating those statistics at the scale of a data set. For example, if the data set consists of millions of objects or files or whatever, the size information require a kind of central accounting or to get it.
That's right. Or maybe a number of records.
Objects. Number of objects.
It's the same for read time and write time. Every I operation, it's kind of, yes, it's aggregated over all objects of a dataset.
The time you were speaking about size, I was just thinking the same. Just at the time he was telling that size is probably not that pertinent. I thought, oh God, M time and A time are not pertinent too.
I think at the end we will need to define which metadata will be necessary for to be associated with data sets. But today we need also to understand why we would like to have those data, to do what at the end.
Actually, I think there are very few metadata which are required. So I think we need. We need. I will try to put them to underline them in yellow. We probably need the creation time. That's a useful metadata. Last read time, last write time, last metadata change. Probably not that pertinent. We need the owner, or owner can be a set of people. Maybe.
Yeah, again, this one will depend how we implement user management in IOC and on which technology we rely. Maybe we can use Unix groups, or we need to manage our own.
Yes, I think we'll have to have a design session about credential management. Actually,
yeah, I think
that's a question of credentials. And the dataset ID. Well, I like these tag ideas. What do you think about tags?
Tags, you mean user-defined tags?
Yeah.
Or standardized tags?
No, user-defined, plain text.
Yeah, I think it's probably a very good idea for user to be able to describe the data sets in a free format. Yes, I think so.
Yeah. I think that's a very useful feature. Yes, definitely.
Actually, I would ask the question, can't all the other attributes be expressed by tags? Would it make easier handling those data sets if they are basically only tags?
I think they will. And even the creation time, it probably will be, creation time will probably be an epoch time, but since it's because it's easy to manage later. But since it's metadata which is written once and never change, then we can have a text version of it. Okay. Any other point on those on this dataset stuff?
Where do you include the rights And any restrictions? Oh, I guess it will come in permissions, right? Okay.
It's here. Actually.
Okay.
Yeah, auto. Anyway, we can make it clearer. Okay. So at this point, yeah.
Do you match a data set with bucket from S3, or this is something?
Yes, but you spoil the rest of my topic.
Okay.
That's the idea, basically.
Okay.
Okay, so there is this idea of working data, which is probably, I think it's a useful idea, but it's very common with datasets. Actually, when a user will start, he will have a few datasets to work on. And those will be the working data. Now, I took the example of a TensorFlow program, which wants to train the network to make it capable of differentiating cats and dogs. Then it have a collection of dogs, a collection of cats, two different data sets. And at the end, it trained a network, a neuronal network, and it can keep the configuration of the network inside an object or inside a data set, which is trained a network it's managed. Behind this, there is the idea of dynamicity of the data set. So data set is some may not involve, some may involve a lot, and we have static data set versus dynamic data sets. And I don't know if this idea of working data, which is to be exposed to the end users, because that's the way they will handle data, but I think we should agree on what we say about working data, but I don't know if it is that pertinent from an implementation point of view. What do you think of that?
I think I tend to agree. When we had this discussion about working data initially, the idea was to know what we have to set up on the as the ephemeral services to make the link between, for instance, a POSIX representation of data and the object containing the data in the long-term storage. Mm-hmm. And working data was okay before launching my workflow, because my workflow only handle POSIX files. I need to expose the data through POSIX. And so this is what we meant with working data in the previous discussion. But then maybe for me, and we probably need to discuss that further, for me it's closer to namespaces, because at the end, what the application will work with is probably namespaces in the sense of directories and file names, if we think about the POSIX namespace. But even for S3, we have the S3 namespace, and I'm not that familiar with S3 native applications, but I know, for instance, TensorFlow can read the data from S3. I guess that as for POSIX, the application are expecting data to be organized in some way. For instance, if we go back to your example of the neural network, maybe the training images needs to be stored in a training name directory. Then we need to have another directory which is named valid, for instance, that will contain the test images that will be used to validate the neural network is correctly trained. And then maybe we have another directory which is the neural network, and then containing the weights of the neural network, so the output of the training. So organizing the data to be compliant with what the workflow expects, for me, is the namespace. But and probably it's the same as the working data we have been discussing.
Maybe we should keep that working data discussion for the workflow discussion that you will add later.
Yes.
Okay. Any other ideas about working data? Okay. So the big part of today's discussion is the namespace. So basically, the idea is what I said is brief. the object store provide a flat addressing method. Objects are no connection together. There are no real organizations. A namespace is a way to put organization amongst objects. So it's basically, you do that organization by a collection of metadata. Each are key value pairs, on each are stored in KVS. The namespace addresses objects, and at the end you identify and give a way to address them, not by the object ID but by using a more user-friendly way to address the object. And it can be used for implementing some kind of features, such as echoes, for example, or permission right, which are kind of POSIX features. So in IOC, we can identify very easily 3 namespaces. We have the DASI, we have the S3 namespace, and we have the POSIX namespace. So the S3 namespace is quite simple. We have a bucket at the beginning. A bucket is definitely to be mapped to a data set. And behind the bucket name, you have a slash, and then you have a set of characters. So it's a plain text addressing, which is actually the key to access the object. You just have to have a dictionary to tell for this bucket, this text is associated with this object ID. It's a simple key value association. S3 is nice because the key can contain slash and slash character, and this way you may have kind of file system-like organization. You can have a key which is my directory1 / my directory2 / my very important file. Actually, from the S3 point of view, it's a plain text. It doesn't matter if it contains a slash or not. But from the user point of view, it gives a syntactic way of hierarchizing, of providing a hierarchy in the data. The second namespace is a POSIX namespace. POSIX namespace, so it's what I implemented in the libkvsns for the Sedge project. And it basically emulates a POSIX tree where I have actual directory, I have actual files which are associated with objects, I have symbolic link, on everything you can create, you can have in a POSIX file system. Even hard links or every POSIX feature. So you all know how POSIX works. And at the end, when you open the file descriptor to an inode, then it reaches the object's content on your write and read inside the object. There is a KVS to handle all of the POSIX namespace metadata. So I will not give more detail about this implementation. I can provide you the deliverables that I wrote for Sage, but it's very, very easy as long as you have KVS feature and transactions to implement that kind of stuff. So every stuff that are available in the Mero / motor environment. And speaking about the DASI, from me, the DASI is a very specific stuff. It has and it does merge the idea of data sets and namespace for the organization of the user's data, drive to the data themselves. I think, so I will speak about the DASI later. The question that appeared in several of the discussion we had was WP 3, 4, and 5 is that what if I have an object in the created by the S3, and if I want to address it by a POSIX way or by the DASI or whatever. So what I introduce here is the idea of object attachment. An object attachment is very similar to an hard link. I don't know how familiar you are with this POSIX semantics, so I just do a quick recall, quick reminder. Imagine you have this file, so it's in that directory, in that tree. You want it to exist in this directory as well because you want to do backup. You will not move it. You will not do a symbolic link. From my point of view, symbolic link are really creatures from L. It's the offspring of L. That's an horrible creature. But you can hard link. You can do that command, and you can hard link the dir2, dir1, dir2 file inside backup, as f_backup, and you will increase the inode counter. The same inode will exist in two different places of the same names of the same POSIX tree. And if you can access whatever of the names which are there, whatever the path, you will get the same data. You can modify one, you will modify the other side. They are the same creature every time. Just address two times differently. And you can delete one, the other one will remain. You will just decrease the number of inodes. So that's that's a feature of hard link. And actually, what I like to have is the capabilities for an object to be attached to a namespace. Imagine I have a POSIX namespace. I have created /dir1/dir2. I have an existing object ID whose ID is 1234. And I want to attach it as a file. I can tell to the POSIX namespace in directory 1/directory2 file foo will be addressing object 1234. It's very easy to do the same as S3. You can take a key that you want in a bucket and say this key is attached to that object whose object ID is 1234. You just have to create a new entry in the S3 ID2 object ID dictionary. So coming back to the DASI, I think that DASI have no interest in implementing attachment or this kind of stuff from other file system or of other namespaces. Basically, exist objects are imported in the DASI by DASI tools. They are managed by the DASI, but it may be interesting sometime for system application, I think, to have a list of objects which are involved in some criteria, in some request, some criteria on the DASI. When a user will say, I want to access that data matching that hierarchical description, then the system may say, I want to get all of the object IDs that are involved if the user is querying on that research criteria. And giving that list, it could create a namespace of a POSIX namespace or an S3 namespace or whatever it wants, attach those objects to the namespace, do the system operation it needs on it, for example, backupping them or whatever, and then destroy the temporary namespace it will have created and leave the object, live their life in the DASI world. The idea between namespace, it can be permanent. A user may, if a user wants to have his data accessed in a POSIX way, then it will have a persistent POSIX file system. It can work this way. It may be temporary. It's very easy to bridge S3 to POSIX and POSIX to S3. I can take the path for every file in the POSIX namespace, decide that those paths will be key to an S3 bucket, and convert a POSIX namespace into an S3 namespace. I can consider the slash in the keys inside the S3, consider that there are delimiters for actual directory, and then build directory and then attach objects in file in those directory. It's very easy to do. So what is your comments about this idea of namespace?
Yeah, I think from S3 to POSIX, it totally makes sense. And this is I'm just thinking about DASI because POSIX and S3 is something that many of us understand. So I think, yeah, in terms of interoperating between S3 and POSIX and DASI, So the three of the three protocols. So it's slightly unclear, but maybe if we discuss a bit more.
Yeah, is there some WP5 people in the room for some DASI expert actually?
This is one of the problems that James is on vacation.
Yeah, I know.
This is why I insisted so much on the recording.
Yeah, but I think if DASI fits into this as well, then yeah, it totally makes sense. DASI and POSIX and S3.
Yeah, the way I see it is that at the end, the DASI data will be stored either in object or files. And so they will need for that to choose buckets, organization, object names, or POSIX directories and file names, but it's totally hidden to the users at the end. And so the users will not care about that. The only features we may want for that, for instance, is to backup a DASI database, DASI data set. If we want to backup, it is probably much easier if we are able to go back to the files or the objects, and so backup the object or the files. And so the relationship between DASI and files or objects is probably necessary for those kind of operation, but not for users, I think. So as opposed to POSIX and S3 namespaces where the users will be exposed, and so the users will have to create them.
Yeah, I think the question of bridges in between DASI and other namespaces is mostly a system matter. I think we need it, but we can accept a very low-level interface because system guys will rewrite the tools they want for their own purpose. So there's no problem. Okay, so basically it's important to understand that namespaces are independent from datasets. There are a way to view datasets, to provide an interface to datasets for users, but they exist independently from objects, from datasets. They can be destroyed, and if a namespace is destroyed, it doesn't mean that the objects in it will be destroyed. It's a mere metadata creature.
So I have a question. How you maintain the metadata you attach to the files and the objects? If you map, for example, you have an object in the dataset, you map it in S3, you also map it in NFS. How you maintain the metadata? Because the size, for example, I think Mero or Motor doesn't track the size of an object. You have to do it yourself. So you will do it in the S3 metadata and also in the NFS metadata. So you have two.
That's right.
Two locations.
That's a good point. So if an object is in this thing is different namespaces, how will metadata Yeah, so it's something to be done. We can have, we may have callbacks or things like that, but well, don't like this idea. It's very easy to do. Or we may decide to keep that informed. Well, actually, we may, that's just an idea there. We may have an attachment mechanic to metadata as well, telling, for very few attributes, telling the size of an object in this namespace, it's attached to that other metadata residing elsewhere. We may have this kind of stuff. Or a very few, or on the other hand, we may identify the, for example, I don't care if I change the rights, the permission rights for an object in an S3 namespace. It doesn't matter, it just exists in an S3 namespace. But I think that the modification time for an object and the size are the two only attributes that have to be owned by the object itself and not the namespace. The namespace should interpret the metadata exposed by the object, but not own it directly. It just refers to that object metadata. What do you think of that?
Is there a use case where we need to have multiple namespaces addressing the same objects? Because it's definitely a problem of consistency, and so we have to implement event bus or callbacks or some quite complex mechanisms. So is there a use case where we need to have both S3 and POSIX access?
I can imagine an example. Maybe it's theoretical, but let's go back to our initial example with one data set containing 1,000 cats images and another data set containing 1,000 dogs images. If two data scientists want to train, or if one data scientist want to train two neural networks at the same time, so launch two workflows, and both will access the data. So in this case, it's read-only. So maybe it's simpler to handle, but yeah, I think we can imagine a situation where the data sets will be accessed in parallel by.
Yeah, it will happen. This kind of nasty things will happen in some time. So we have to handle it.
So a way to make the problem simpler is perhaps to define a condition. For example, if you load an object into different data sets simultaneously, then it must be immutable, for example. So it would match the use case you mentioned about accessing the same.
Yeah, you're right.
The same data, and then if the object is if the file is modified in the data sets, it would result in a different object at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, this idea of making an object immutable is very easy to implement. You just have to have a counter of reference, just as a counter of inode. It's pretty simple to implement. Yeah. But this actually brings the idea that some metadata belongs to the object, because the counter of reference will be a metadata attached to the object, not attached to any namespace. It's belongs to the object itself. And the more I'm looking at that, the more I believe that we have these three metadata attached to the object. We have the modification time, or even the creation time, but it's probably not necessarily, but it can be a nice feature. But anyway, you have the modification time, you have the size, even the space used if you want to handle sparse objects, and the counter of reference. What do you think of that?
Yeah, it's interesting to have a reference counter depending on the current dataset that use the objects.
Okay, so I think I'll be completing the document with that idea. I think we have to bring a clear idea about to clarify the idea of metadata attached to the object.
I think one of the use cases, to Thomas's question, one of the use cases that comes to my mind is ECMWF use case. I think they have simulation output finally that becomes the input to product generation that is potentially accessed by various consumers over some kind of cloud. So you have actually abstraction of sort of POSIX namespaces on the data. And then for the same data, you need to have sort of, having kind of a S3 view to make it a part of the sort of the product generation for the various customers using that data externally over a cloud. So in my mind, I was thinking that could be an example of these multiple views. So it may or may not be the case, but I think ECMWF might have some interesting scenarios for this thing of having access of an object through various different protocols. Maybe there's other use cases as well.
But anyway, there is an unbreakable law in computer science. If it is possible, then it will happen. So it will happen.
So I think use case there is one which is writable. There's a data set which is writable, as there are data produced in it, and the other one is more read-only for accessing the results. I think we can assume that, or perhaps I should rather do a question. Do you think a dataset is only written for one application at once, and other views could be read-only?
Maybe, Thomas, the namespace is to be set read-only or read-write.
Yeah, I think it probably cannot apply to the entire namespace. I don't know. Yeah. By the way, just wanted maybe to have also a discussion about the user exposure of namespace to understand how you see also how user interact. So as far as I understand, the users will have to create the namespaces.
Yes and no. You may have tools that will do that for them.
Well, yeah, but even if it's a tool, I think it's upon user request that to create a new namespace.
Sure.
Yeah, so it can be kind of automated, but so users will have to create and then to manage. So again, we have a kind of crude interaction with users. They have to be able to create, to read, to update, and to delete. Can I share my screen, please? Just a few seconds, Philippe.
I have to close the meeting in 5 minutes, actually.
5 minutes? Yeah. Okay. So maybe it will be a short question, and if needed, we will discuss over email. Just to show the picture.
Yeah.
It will be easier to ask my question, I think.
Yeah, show your picture.
Okay, thank you. I'm sending it. Is it okay with you?
Mm-hmm.
So again, trying to build on the same example we started to discuss at the beginning. So the users will create the two data sets with the cats and dogs. And then how do you see the namespace creation? For instance, the same user wants to run the neural network training. And for the neural network training, he needs a directory that is called training with these 800 images. He needs another directory with valid with 2 cats images, 200, and also 200 dogs images. So those 1,000 cats images come from this data set. And then the dog images come from this as another one. And then green is for read only. But then we need also to have to produce the results.
Yes.
And so we need the result directory, which will be read-write. So that's why I answered to your question initially. I think namespaces cannot be either entirely read-only or write-only or read-write, because we may have this situation.
Actually, this may be two different namespaces. You are not forced to use only one namespace at a time. You can use several. You can have a read-only namespace with input data on an output namespace with results.
Okay, so that's clear. Yes, you're right. So we should have something like that.
You may use POSIX permissions to make sure that you won't write in the input information.
Mm-hmm. I see. So we could keep this read-only or read-write namespaces and build like that. So I will draw another one.
It makes sense because it's probably experimental data which are to be used in different computation, in different experiences.
Okay.
So you have a need for it. It's part of your working data, but it's speaking about S3. It will be those will exist in different buckets. On each bucket is a namespace.
Yeah, so that's why I was trying to have this real example and understand what are the requirements. Because for me, for instance, in this situation, we need data from one bucket or one data set going into two different directory or two different locations in the namespace. Because you want your 1,000 cats images, you want 800 here and 200 elsewhere. So is it what you have in mind? Is it possible? And
yes. So that brings to my final point actually. Can I reshare my screen for
sure.
two short minutes? Okay. So basically, I wanted to speak about very quickly about the referrals. Actually, you can build the namespace by gathering other namespace. So it's only a pure POSIX feature. It's not an S3 feature. From my point of view, S3 data sets are buckets, and you do not reference another bucket inside the bucket. So, but a referral is something that exists in NFS before. It's basically a directory, but it's not really a directory. As you traverse it, the server tells you you have come to another place. For accessing the data which are below, you should go to look. You should see my friends in the other side of the room on Delve Within. So it's kind of a moon point driven by the server itself. It moves the client when it's traversed the referral to another location. And this way, in your example, Philippe, you may have 3 different namespaces: cats, dogs, and result. And you can have a main namespace with the 3 directory / cats pictures / dogs picture and / result, and each of the directory are actually referrals.
Yeah, I'm not sure it works like in my example, because in my valid directory I need to have cats and dogs images. So it's one single directory containing data from 2 data sets. Okay, but anyway, I think we don't have time to go further.
This question of referral is also used for if I want a POSIX namespace gathering every object ever created in the IOC, it will be far too big, and I need it to be segmented. And it's a very easy way to segment that stuff into more manageable things. Any comments on that referral idea?
Yeah, I think for me, we need to probably better understand how we will expose the feature to users and what we will ask them. For instance, it's not clear for me who will manage this referral. Is it the user that will choose that we need a referral here in the hierarchy, or is it hidden? I'm afraid if we expose that to users, it will be very complex.
No, it has to be. It's a tool for gathering different namespaces, but it has to be wrapped in more user-friendly notions.
Yeah, so studying how users interact with those namespace feature, how those they create and then activate, because later in WP2 we will need to understand which namespaces we need to set up for the workflow.
Yes.
So they are created, then they are used, and then maybe deleted where they are no longer needed. So we need to probably dig more into that.
Yeah. So we have the next Cross WP meeting in 2 weeks. We're supposed to speak about workflow, but this is definitely a workflow related idea. So should we speak about that in 2 weeks more precisely, and including that aspect into the discussion?
Yes, I think so.
Okay,
that's a good idea.
Any other points? Because before I close, before Michael closed the meeting, because Michael launched the meeting actually.
Perhaps.
Yeah, you shared this, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I will send you the. So I will probably. I think I will send that document, that reference inside. I don't know. I will send it in the technical. In the IOC technical mailing list, I think.
Yeah.
I will send it in one of the IOC mailing list.
Yeah, thanks.
And so then in 2 weeks, and people would have time to add comments and to make ask questions in the documents, and then in 2 weeks we would go through this again. Is that what I understand?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, that's a question. I have an IOC all-day cross work package meeting in 2 weeks too.
No, this is me. This is I'm very sorry. This is still in your agenda. I mixed up June and July, so this is not relevant any longer. Oh, this is good that you pointed out. So I need to send an email to all. I thought I deleted this, but obviously this did not delete in all agendas. So this was wrong from the beginning.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So
okay,
it would just be again a 1 hour cross topic session as we had today, Stefan.
Okay, understand. Great. Thank you.
And do you have this invitation?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I have both in the agenda, so I wondered which one is the correct one.
Okay, so thank you for attending this meeting. So I will send you the links to the document. So it will be an editor link. So anyway, who has the link will be capable of editing it. And I'm waiting for your comments inside the document. And within 2 weeks was a discussion focused on workflow and how datasets, namespaces, and stuff like that will be managed by the user. And this discussion will be led by the other Philippe, actually, by Philippe Couvet.
Yes.
Okay.
That's the biggest confusion of the IOC project.
Yeah.
Thank you very much to all of you, and wishing you an excellent evening very soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.